Thank you for the opportunity to invest and to pour in and to just have this moment and to recognize and embrace this moment to reflect on greatness, to reflect on an individual that invested in the world's greatest resource, which is people. Now, I must forewarn you in advance, I'm not the typical prototype speaker who stands behind a podium and enunciates words very well, and it's yes and no, trust. In about a couple seconds, I'm all over that stage right there because I love expanding my comfort zone and making people uncomfortable for change because that's how change happens. Before I get into all that, I would like to introduce my amazing co-pilot in life. She's my queen of 24 years of marriage. Falana, please stand up. We attended both the same junior high and high school. If I have time, I'll share that very interesting story. She's a first round pick in a 1-round draft right there. And she is absolutely adorable. She puts up with me, trust. And thank you for the staff. Thank you for the administration. Special thanks to Dr. Iris Cooper, who had the ability to reach out and help me and my family for many years. She's an absolute rare and amazing and powerful gem. And that choir was absolutely adorable. I love having moments like that in time. And I'll tell you what in a second. Just give me a round of applause, please. Because it was a moment just like that when I was in the 5th grade that changed my life. The teacher asked me to read a poem over the loudspeaker at Moeller Elementary on the south side of Columbus. And I read that poem and I said some crazy words, but it was in that moment, it's in the powerful moments that changed the trajectory of my life. And I was able to move past several obstacles to be a speaker and an investor here today. Given the charge to speak about Dr. Martin Luther King, I can just be very honest and transparent. It was a journey. That moment was a journey. See, being a motivational or an inspirational speaker, I kind of like to, jump off of my personal story and introduce 4 or 5 points, a closing, a charge, just to motivate and just get off that stage, sign autographs, do some coaching later on. And so I started doing some research and, here I am. I'm about to move over. Is this on? Yeah. I started doing some research about Dr. Martin Luther King and, the things that I've learned in school. Yeah, I know that. And, the march and this and that. And, the great speeches. And I started digging a little deeper, right? And I started looking at the accomplishments in his life. And like, well, wait a second. This guy was, one of the youngest people or the youngest person ever to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm like, whoa, kind of trumps your NFL story, huh, buddy? This guy won the Grammys. He won the actual Grammy Award, and the list goes on. And the accomplishments of his unselfish nature in his act to put himself second, to sacrifice his life ultimately and his family for change. I said, well, I need to put that away. Actually, it was humbling. But then my mind began to switch. And I began to ask myself, there's great accomplishments, but what made this individual great? And I spent weeks digging into the mindset, the personality of this amazing man. And I had a list of maybe 12, 13, but I just want to extract maybe 2 or 3. And I want to share with you today, and it's my hope that by sharing this, that you'll be able to take and pull these gems, these pearls, and infect and affect the community and ultimately the world, because we're all connected. The first word that stuck out was the word courage. Incredible courage. I'm going to set the stage. It's 1955. And about 4 or 5 days ago, Rosa Parks decides not to sit on or give her seat up for an individual. And that sparked a huge protest now. 1955. And this is going on for a few days, and they decided to have a meeting at a church. And there was thousands of people involved, and there was a lot of energy, but not a lot of direction. And in this basement, there's politicians, there's well-known individuals, and there's a ton of pastors. And in the African-American community, the church holds a lot of power, then and now. And they're meeting. And they form an organization. And they're like, okay, we have an organization formed. We're going to bring this energy. We're going to point it in the right direction. We're going to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. But who is going to head this up? Who's going to be the president of this organization? Who's going to be the set guy? Who's going to be the point person? And pastor after pastor, bishop after bishop, politician after politician said, not me. I'm comfortable. I'm a senior pastor. I have a congregation, 2 or 3, 4, 500 people, 1,000 people. I can't do that. Another individual may have said, what about my brand? What about my reputation? What about my safety? My wife and kids. I know the owner of the bus company. We're on the same chamber. That's not going to go well. And what if it fails? My name's on that? I can't do that. And they're all meeting. And one of them said, what about the new kid? Huh? Yeah, what about the new kid? That Dr. Luther, whatever his name is. Let's get him. He doesn't have, he's a young kid. He doesn't have a lot to lose. It's no big deal. And if it looked bad, hey, he's only 26. Dr. Martin Luther, come here. We took a vote. We have an organization. You're the president. You got a speech. And for the 5,000 people, you have 1 hour. Ready, set, go. He could have backed up. He could have said, no, hey, I can't do that. I'm married. I got a young family. I have a strategic 10-year plan, and that's not good. I don't have to take this charge. I don't want it. Comfortable versus courage. They said he wrote that speech in under 20 minutes. One of the most powerful speeches. That boycott went on for over a year. Every day, every week, every month, he had to motivate and inspire masses of people, invoking anger, but tempering it with love. A 26-year-old kid who said yes. Courage versus comfortable. And that moment changed the world. My heart breaks at the notion that what would have happened had he said no. Having courage, it's like fending off the pressure. It's like Wi-Fi. You feel the pressure when someone says a joke that's not cool, or politics in the office, or the frat brothers or the sorority sisters want to move in a particular way, and you have to have the courage to stand up and say, that is not right. That is an injustice. I have to fight the current, and that Wi-Fi is pushing you to make a decision, encouraging you to just go along with the crowd and keep your mouth shut. And I'm telling you what, we need more people to get fed up and fired up and stand up and say enough is enough. The answer is no, or the answer is yes to the opportunity, because I want to push people towards a decision of justice. That's what we're missing. It's that word. Courage. Courage to stand up against bullying. Courage to stand up against racism. Courage to stand up against prejudices of all sorts. Courage to stand up against poverty. Courage to stand up against an injustice in the workplace. Where is our courage? I'm like, how did he get this courage? How did this 26-year-old young man find the courage? And it brings me to my next point, which is very controversial. I have to have courage to go there. But I am. Woven in every message, every speech, every interview, and every biography and autobiography I've ever get my hands on was the word God. I said, is it God that gave him the courage? Now I have to go there. And I don't want to offend anyone in this room. And I promise I won't exegese the text and 4 points in a closing and give a love offering at the end. I promise I won't go there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract a word or an attribute of God. And that word is truth. Because it really puzzled me, because this man was able to balance the family life with marches, with politicians, with interviews, with hate, with racism is coming at him every single day. He's on this magazine and on that magazine, Time magazine. How is he able to balance all of that and keep marching on? I'm like, what is that? He lived his life grounded in truth. See, you can have facts and not have truth. You can have conjectures, theories, hypotheses, and still not have truth. And because he lived his life grounded and rooted in truth, it enabled him to triangulate his life. What do I mean by that? See, whenever you want to go somewhere, there's a term called triangulation, which what GPSs uses, and basically it's a point where you're at, where you're going, and that unmovable point. It's the unmovable point that I want to talk about, the truth. And no matter where he was walking, the interviews or the protests or the hate messages and the hate speech, he will always be able to triangulate his life to that light and say, that is my truth. And now I can navigate. I like to fly planes. Sometimes I like to fly Southwest. I love Southwest. And you should see when I walk in the back, they're like, oh, please don't sit by me, big man. Like, yeah, I'm sitting right next to you in the center seat. And when I'm flying, most of the time we're landing and we're flying in the clouds. And as we're flying in the clouds, I'm like, I don't know where we're at right now. But the pilot has a set of instruments that guides him to his truth or to the runway. What I'm saying to you today is that in order to infect and to create change, you have to have a truth in your life. It's very dangerous to conjure up or to have your personal truth. And I'm not here to be a proponent of, hey, you could do Christian or this religion. Or, I'm not speaking. You know what? Take the principles, make them your truth to triangulate and to navigate. And the truth will guide you what to do in injustice, what to say when the opportunity arises. That man lived his life off of truth. And that truth gave him a very interesting perspective. It allowed him to see to and to see through things and to attack racism and injustice at the crux or at the root. What do I mean by that? As I looked through the speeches, and as I analyzed his marches, the vast majority of them was about race, but it wasn't. You see, the 1955 march, it was about injustice, but the attack was economic. And the majority of his marches and his protests were economic in base, in root. Because he realized that if I can empower a person from an economic standpoint, then the opportunities are limitless. He had that perspective because he had the truth. The poor man's march, this was going on, that's happening, housing, economics. Economics that would allow a person that's underprivileged or that's not privileged to go to school, to get an education, to get a great job, to get an opportunity. Because the real battle, he realized from perspective, is not white versus black. This color or that color. The real battle is economic. Yeah, he understood that. Speaking of race, he understood race. He understood that, there's really one race. That's the human race. And we're all from, whether you believe it's two people or scientists believe it's one female in Africa, or anthropologists, when they dig up the bones, is the oldest person. We are all from the same two people. Separate but equal is a facade. It is a lie. Now try having a conversation of racism now. Hating your own brother. He understood that. That's why when we talk about equality, yes, I include all groups now because I understand that was his fight. But the most important aspect about this is that he also understood his race. His race, unlike other races, was not a sprint, not a jog or a 4 to 5 mile run. It was a relay. And he realized that the dream that he had, the seed that he carried, might not have been his original seed. In fact, let me just back up. Let me just repent for a second. Those men that are in the room that didn't want that charge, maybe because it wasn't for them to have, maybe it was for him to have. And he grabbed the opportunity. He seized the moment. He didn't have it. He held it. And he knew that one day he was going to have to hand this off. He knew that one day that his struggle, his fight for freedom, he was going to have to pass the baton to people like us in this room. So much so that in his last speech, he said, he referenced Moses in the Bible. He says, I've seen the mountaintop. I've been there, and I might not get there with you. What happened is for some of us, we may have dropped it. And it's my encouragement for you today is to pick up that fight and begin to run and continue the fight of injustice. Very humbling, because when I see people without opportunities, maybe someone's homeless, maybe someone's impoverished, incarcerated, before I judge, you know what I say to myself now? Did somebody hand them a baton? Did somebody give them an opportunity? Did somebody pull them to the side and sit them down and say, this is how you win in life, son? Did somebody do that for them like they did for me? I played 7 years professional football. Graduate of Indiana University, IU Bloomington. Born and raised on the south side of Columbus. OH? I don't know what Otterbein society. OB. But think about this for a second. I was documented with 4 to 5 learning disabilities. I stuttered my entire life. I couldn't complete a sentence till college. I'm one of 6 kids. My mom scrubbed floors in Bexley. I was voted most likely to fail. I left high school with a 1.62 accumulative GPA, not on my ACT. And the list goes on and on. But along the way, there was a few people that picked up the baton for me. I said, come here, son. Here, grab it and run with it. No, straighten up your form and run. I guarantee you, had those individuals not invaded my life, I would not be here today. Students, I have a different charge for you. I want to charge you with the word courage. When you look at the speeches, Dr. Martin Luther King, and people are marching, both black and white, there were about, 200 million Americans around then. Where were they? Where was millions of Americans, and they sat and they watched the ABC News or the NBC News or whatever they watched. I don't care, ESPN, I don't care what they were watching back then. But where were they? They were comfortable. Oh, I see the injustice. I'm not getting involved in that. That's not my battle. That's not my battle. That's not my fight. Millions of Americans watched it and said, what a shame. I want to challenge you, students, to pick up that mantle and to walk and to lead this community with courage. And say, today I will fight for injustice. Today I will call out the wrongs. I will not go with the flow. A superhero is not a superhero without the dark, without the villain. Without the villain, the superhero is a circus show. You know, he can fly, he can run through a wall. That's great, man. You know, let's get a picture. But when an antagonist comes, it gives the superhero power. In other words, the darkness gives the light its shine. And young people, the darker the night, the brighter the light. I said, the darker the night, the brighter the light. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We might have darker times coming, and we're going to need you to make a stand in love, with truth, with courage. And say, not on my watch. And maybe, just maybe, an opportunity to come and, say something like, let me get that young kid over there. Why don't you stand up and lead this? And you'll be ready to infect and to affect the world. I have been all over the world. I have spoken and motivated all over the planet Earth because why? It's because a couple people picked up the baton and said, let me help Aaron on the south side of Columbus with a 1.62. And let me empower him to change the world. And that same power of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is in this room. Activate it, live by it, run with it, win with it. God doesn't call the qualified, but he qualifies to call. Thank you.